The silence that fell over the Pine View Estates Community Pavilion was so thick you could have spread it on a cracker and called it HOA-approved butter. 24 neighbors sat frozen around the long folding tables Karen Hargrove had graciously arranged in perfect military rows. Plastic forks hovering halfway to their mouths like they were afraid to move and trigger another fine. My mother-in-law, sorry. I mean the HOA president. Karen's voice still echoed off the fairy light-draped rafters like a car alarm nobody could shut off. You're such a useless neighbor. Those words slapped me harder than the $250 citation she'd once mailed me for excessive dandelion tolerance. I sat there, hands trembling in my lap, staring at the empty spot on the dessert table where my pie should have been. Every single resident was staring at me. My husband Robert's face glowed the exact shade of the warning, violation notice, envelopes Karen loved to hand-deliver. Her daughter Claire wore that smug little smirk, the one she practiced in a mirror while reviewing security cam footage of kids playing too loudly. 4-year-old Tommy tugged my sleeve. "Mommy, why is President Karen yelling?" His innocent whisper cracked my heart wider than the pothole on Maple Lane that Karen refused to fix unless we paid this special assessment. Karen stood at the head of the tables like she owned the entire zip code, which, technically, the HOA bylaws she wrote let her believe. Her steel gray bob was sprayed so stiff it could deflect a tennis ball. And her signature crimson blazer, the one she saved for official community events, screamed power. "I gave you one simple assignment. Jessica," she continued, voice dripping with that fake sweet syrup she used right before she fined someone. "Bring dessert. One thing. And you couldn't even manage that. What kind of resident forgets the HOA Christmas potluck centerpiece?" The whole neighborhood watched the train wreck in real time. Robert's aunts and uncles shifted in their plastic chairs like they were calculating how much their property values might drop if they spoke up. His cousins stared at their green bean casseroles. Even Harold, Karen's long-suffering husband, studied his loafers instead of defending anyone. I whispered, "I'm sorry," but the words barely made it past my lips. Tommy had a 102 fever this morning. Urgent care took forever. Karen slammed her palm on the table so hard the plastic wine glasses jumped. Always an excuse. You're supposed to contribute to this community, but all you do is make excuses and waste everyone's time. That's when something inside me finally snapped louder than a snapped HOA rule. Waste time? Waste time? I thought of every single emergency contribution check Robert and I had written because Karen had called crying about sudden roof repairs or urgent tree trimming that somehow never showed up on the official ledger. I stood so fast my chair skidded backward with a screech that made half the block jump. The pavilion went graveyard quiet. Even Tommy stopped fidgeting. You want to talk about wasting community resources? "Karen," my voice came out steady, stronger than the reinforced fences she demanded we all install. "Let's talk resources. Real ones." Karen's perfectly plucked eyebrows shot up. She wasn't used to pushback. For 3 years I'd smiled and nodded while she told everyone my lawn looked abandoned, my holiday lights were tacky, and I was raising Tommy like a feral raccoon. "Not today. You call me useless?" I laughed, but it sounded like broken glass. "Then maybe stop texting me every month begging for community loans you never repay." The color drained from Karen's face faster than property values after an HOA lien. Claire's fork clattered. Robert looked like he'd swallowed a violation notice. "What are you talking about?" Harold asked, genuinely confused. "Oh, your wife hasn't told you." I turned to the entire stunned audience, phone already in my hand. About the $500 she needed last month for emergency common area lighting, or the $300 the month before for sudden drainage issues, or the $200 before that because the welcome sign was vandalized, except nobody saw any vandalism. Robert hissed, "Jessica, stop. But I was done stopping. Stop what? Telling the truth? Your precious HOA president has squeezed over $2,000 out of us this year alone, while fining me $50 for a single dandelion and calling me a community liability. Karen's face went from pale to purple faster than a bad spray tan. You're lying, she shrieked, voice cracking like cheap laminate flooring. You're a liar and a troublemaker. You've been trying to undermine my leadership since the day you moved in. That's when things went terribly, deliciously wrong. 3 weeks before that glorious Pineview Estates Christmas potluck disaster. I was folding laundry in our perfectly compliant two-story when Robert walked in from work looking like he'd just been cited for breathing too loudly. Hey, babe, he said, loosening his tie like it was a noose. Karen called today. My stomach dropped straight into the HOA-mandated mulch bed. Karen's calls always meant trouble wrapped in fake concern. What now? I asked, still folding Tommy's tiny shirts that somehow never stayed within the approved toy storage guidelines. Robert rubbed his face. She needs help with the community pavilion electric bill. Says the power company is threatening to shut it off before the party if we don't pay by Friday. I stopped mid-fold. How much? $250. I stared at him. We'd already written her a $300 check last month for emergency roof inspection. That never happened. Before that, $400 for tree trimming that somehow only trimmed Karen's personal rose bushes. Robert, we can't keep doing this, I said. We have our own mortgage. Tommy needs new snow boots. And my car keeps making that death rattle noise the HOA would fine me for if they heard it. He looked exhausted. I know, but she's been president for 12 years. She raised the neighborhood standards after the last board quit. I can't just let the pavilion go dark for the biggest event of the year. What about Harold? He's still working, right? Robert shrugged. Karen says his salary barely covers their HOA dues and groceries. You know how expensive everything is now. I wanted to scream about how expensive Karen's weekly salon visits were. But Robert looked so guilty. I love my husband. I loved our house. How could I be the resident who said no to community needs? Okay, he sighed. But this has to be the last time for a while. We're already dipping into Christmas savings. Robert kissed my forehead. You're the best. Jess, I'll write the check tomorrow. That Saturday, we dragged ourselves to Karen's daughter Claire's birthday barbecue. Mandatory attendance per the neighborly participation clause she loved to quote. Karen was there, of course, in a brand new designer tracksuit, flashing fresh acrylic nails while bragging about finding deals. Oh, this old thing, she laughed when someone complimented her outfit. I've had it forever. I'm so good at stretching community dollars. Unlike some people who waste money on frivolous nonsense. She looked straight at me in my $8 thrift store sundress. Later, while I fetched Tommy juice, I overheard her gossiping to the treasurer. Jessica just doesn't understand proper neighborhood standards. Poor Robert works so hard, and she can't even keep their yard compliant. Did you see how messy Tommy looked? His bike was left out again. I'd spent 45 minutes that morning teaching Tommy the approved storage zone. And don't get me started on her cooking complaints. Robert's lost weight since they moved in, Karen continued loudly. I keep telling him he needs to eat at our house more. Real food. Not whatever Jessica throws together. My face burned, but I smiled and said nothing. I never said anything. The next week, Robert came home with fresh bad news. Karen's car broke down again, he said. She needs $400 for repairs, so she can still do her nightly patrols. I was paying bills at the kitchen island. Our checkbook bleeding red. We gave her money 2 weeks ago for the pavilion bill. I know, but what's she supposed to do? She can't enforce the rules without a vehicle. Can't Harold or Claire help? He shook his head. Karen doesn't want to burden them. Claire just closed on her new McMansion. I signed the check with shaking hands. Fine. But we need limits. Robert, this can't continue. He promised to talk to her. That conversation never happened. Instead, 2 days later, I ran into Karen at the only grocery store open past curfew. She was loading her cart with filet mignon and a $60 bottle of wine. When she saw me staring, she smiled like a shark. "Oh, hello. Jessica. Just picking up a few things for Harold's birthday. Claire's bringing her new boyfriend. I want everything perfect for my successful daughter." As she rolled away with my money in her cart, something cold and furious started growing in my chest. Still, I said nothing. Not yet. 2 weeks before the potluck, Karen called an emergency board meeting at her house. Code for "I want to feel important." She stood in her living room like a general addressing troops. "The Christmas potluck will be at the pavilion, as always. Harold and I will handle the turkey and ham. Claire, you're on mashed potatoes and green bean casserole, truffle oil this year." "Darling." Claire beamed. "Of course, Mom." I sat on the couch, feeling invisible, while Tommy zoomed toy cars on the floor. "Robert and Jessica will bring the rolls and dessert," Karen announced without looking at me. "Jessica, I'm sure you can handle picking up a nice pie from the bakery. Something simple. We don't want any cooking disasters." The way she said cooking disasters made my cheeks flame. Last year, my homemade cookies had been a hit with everyone except Karen, who'd spent the night complaining they were too sweet for community standards. Actually, I heard myself say, "I'd like to make a homemade dessert this year." Karen's smile froze. "Oh, how ambitious." Claire snickered. "Mom, remember Jessica's Easter casserole? Nobody could eat it." I felt my face heat, but kept my voice even. "I want to eat a backup plan." "Of course not." "Dear," Karen cooed in that syrupy tone that meant she thought I was an idiot. "I'm sure whatever you make will be adequate." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Karen's smug face and Claire's smirk. I wasn't a bad cook. Tommy begged for my pancakes every weekend. Robert swore my spaghetti beat Karen's. So why did I always feel 2 inches tall around her? The next day, I hit the library, checked out every pie cookbook they had, and spent the following week practicing like my property value depended on it. I watched crust tutorials until my eyes crossed. I called my own mom for her secret recipe. "Honey, why are you stressing over pie?" she asked. "It's just dessert." "It's not just dessert, Mom. It's about respect." By mid-December, I had perfected an apple pie so golden and fragrant the daycare kids I worked with begged for seconds. But Karen wasn't done. At Harold's company holiday mixer, she introduced Claire as my brilliant marketing executive daughter, while I got "This is Jessica, Robert's wife." No mention of my early childhood education degree or the fact I was studying nights for my certification. During dinner, Karen bragged about Claire's new house while I ate salad in silence. "Claire is so smart with money," she announced. "Already redecorating." I wanted to scream that Claire didn't have a toddler or a husband whose HOA president bled them dry. Robert tried. "Jessica works too." Karen nodded politely. "Oh yes, the daycare. That's nice. Almost like practice for Tommy. Right?" I stayed up late perfecting that pie one last time. I was going to prove I wasn't just another non-compliant resident. If only I'd known the pie would be the least of my problems. 3 days before the potluck. Christmas morning started at 5:30 a.m. when Tommy crawled into our bed burning up. "Mommy, I don't feel good." His forehead was a furnace. Robert was already dressing for an emergency work call. 102 degrees, I said, checking the thermometer. "I need to take him to urgent care." "But it's Christmas," Robert worried. "Can't you just give him medicine?" I looked at our glassy-eyed boy. "He's really sick." By 6 a.m., we were in the packed urgent care waiting room. 3 hours of crying, coughing, and dirty looks from other parents. The doctor confirmed a bad virus, no daycare, rest, fluids. We didn't get home until 11:30. I was exhausted, Tommy cranky. All I wanted was the couch and cartoons. But the pie. I had exactly 4 hours to settle Tommy. Shower, wrap presents, bake, and get us party ready. I could do this. I had to. I dosed Tommy, set him up with juice and his tablet, then raced to the kitchen. First disaster, no butter. Sick kid back in the car. Convenience store run at triple prices. Tommy meltdown on the way home. Pie crust with shaking hands while he screamed. Then Claire called. Mom wants to know what time you'll be there. Dinner's at 4:30 sharp. I checked the clock. Already 2 p.m. And crust not even rolled. We'll be there by 4:15. Make sure. You know how Mom gets about tardiness. After hanging up, I wanted to cry. Crust kept tearing. Oven timer at 3:15. While the pie baked, I showered us both. Dressed in our nicest clothes. Wrapped the last gifts. At 4 o'clock, the pie came out perfect, golden. Cinnamon scented glory. Come on, baby, I told Tommy. Scooping him up. I grabbed everything, loaded the car, and drove to the pavilion, smiling. It wasn't until we stood on the steps hearing laughter inside that I realized the pie was still cooling on my kitchen counter next to the dirty bowls. I walked into that pavilion carrying only shame and a sick toddler, while Karen's voice sliced through the chatter like a well-sharpened violation notice. Look who finally decided to grace us with her presence. And without the one thing she was responsible for, the entire block turned. My cheeks burned hotter than Tommy's fever. Karen's red blazer seemed to glow with triumph. I asked for one contribution. Jessica, one. And you couldn't even manage dessert? Some of us take community responsibility seriously. Claire's laugh rang out like a cash register. Mom, remember last year when she tried homemade cookies? Too sweet for the standards. I wanted the floor to open and swallow me along with my forgotten pie. But 3 years of silent fines, whispered gossip, and anonymous complaints about my messy yard finally boiled over. I set Tommy down gently and stepped forward. You're right, Karen. I forgot the pie. Because my son was at urgent care with a 102 fever while you were probably getting your nails done with the last emergency fund check we wrote you. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen's smile faltered for half a second before she recovered. Personal problems are no excuse for letting the community down. We all have hardships. Hardships. I pulled out my phone. Bank app already open. Let's talk hardships. September 15th. $504 emergency pavilion lighting repairs. The lights still look the same. October 20th. $304 medical bills insurance wouldn't cover that somehow paid for your new manicure set I saw on Instagram. November 10th. $204 groceries because Harold's paycheck was late, except I watched you load filet mignon into your cart the same afternoon. The pavilion went dead silent, except for the hum of the string lights Karen had billed us extra to install. Harold dropped his plastic cup. What medical bills? Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish caught in her own net. Jessica, this is neither the time nor the place, she hissed, but her voice wobbled. Oh, it's the perfect place, I said, voice rising. Tell your husband about the medical bills that were really for lottery tickets. Tell everyone how you begged us not to mention the loans because the board wouldn't understand. I scrolled and read the text aloud. Please don't tell Harold or Claire. Things are tight right now. You're such a blessing to the community. Jessica. Claire stood so fast her chair toppled. You're lying. Mom would never. Want proof. I held up screenshots. December 5th, you needed $200 for heating oil for the community center. I drove past your house that night. Every light blazing, windows open, heat cranked so high the snow was melting off your roof. And the receipts I found in your purse last week when I was looking for Tommy's inhaler? $200 in scratchers. Powerball. Mega Millions. All on community emergency money. The silence was heavier than the $5,000 lien Karen once threatened me with. Even the kids at the kids' table stopped playing. Harold turned slowly to his wife. Patricia, Karen, is this true? Karen's breathing accelerated. It's not what it sounds like. Sometimes I buy a few tickets. Everyone does it. It's not a problem. A few tickets? I laughed bitterly. You spent our mortgage money on gambling while fining me for dandelions and calling me a drain on the neighborhood. Claire, she told you I was bad with money, that I was dragging Robert into debt with my shopping sprees. I shop at thrift stores. I clip coupons. I haven't bought new clothes in 6 months because we keep bailing out your mother's community needs. Karen exploded. How dare you, she screamed, chair crashing backward. How dare you come into my event and embarrass me in front of my neighborhood? You're jealous. Jealous because Claire is successful and I actually contribute something while you just exist. Her face was purple, veins popping like overwatered HOA shrubs. I'm not jealous, I said calmly. I'm tired of being your scapegoat while you gamble away the HOA treasury and resident donations. She pointed a shaking finger. You're trying to turn everyone against me. You're poison. You've been poisoned since the day you bought that house. Her breathing turned ragged. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the cool December air. Karen, calm down. Harold reached for her arm. She jerked away. No, this little witch has been plotting against my leadership for years. That's when she grabbed her chest, gasping. I can't breathe. For a split second, everyone froze. Karen had faked headaches to dodge babysitting duty, mysterious back pain to avoid cleanup. We all assumed drama. Mom, stop acting. Claire rolled her eyes. Jessica already embarrassed you enough. But something was wrong. Karen's lips were turning blue. She stumbled forward, legs buckling, and slammed into the corner of the dessert table with a sickening crack. Her head hit the edge. Blood trickled from her forehead. She crumpled like a discarded violation notice. Chaos erupted. Oh my God, Claire shrieked. Harold stood paralyzed. Robert dropped to his knees. Mom? Mom! I dialed 911 with shaking hands while the paramedics' ETA felt like eternity. Cardiac event, the first responder said. Irregular rhythm. Head trauma. They loaded Karen onto a stretcher. As they wheeled her out, Harold glared at me. This is your fault. She was fine until you started your lies. Even in the ambulance lights flashing away, the neighborhood still believed her. The hospital waiting room smelled like antiseptic regret and cheap coffee. We'd been there 3 hours and nobody would look at me. Harold sat in the corner, head in his hands like he was calculating legal fees. Claire paced, her designer dress wrinkled from tears. Robert held sleeping Tommy, avoiding my eyes. When Dr. Martinez finally appeared in scrubs, everyone held their breath. Good news, Mrs. Hargrove is stable. Mild heart attack triggered by extreme stress and undiagnosed hypertension. The head injury needed 12 stitches. No serious brain damage. But she'll need major lifestyle changes, less stress, better diet, exercise, and cardiology follow-up. He scanned our guilty faces. Has she been under unusual pressure lately? Every eye turned to me. I wanted to melt into the linoleum. She's awake now, the doctor continued. Brief, calm visits only, no stressful topics. Karen looked tiny in the bed, machines beeping, bandage stark white against her gray skin. When she saw me behind Robert, tears filled her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. Karen Hargrove never apologized. I'm sorry. Jessica, to all of you. Harold sat beside her. We need to talk about the money. The gambling. Karen closed her eyes, more tears leaking. I know you all hate me now. We don't hate you, Robert said softly. Over the next hour, the truth spilled like a ruptured community pipe. Karen had started with harmless lottery tickets 2 years ago, small bets to supplement HOA funds. When Harold's hours were cut, the bets grew. Daily trips. Bigger tickets. I kept thinking the next one would win. She stared at the ceiling. I'd pay everyone back and still have extra for the neighborhood. Why didn't you tell me? Harold asked, voice cracking. Because I was ashamed. And because she looked at me. It was easier to blame Jessica for every problem than admit I was the one draining the accounts. Claire sank into a chair. Mom, you made me think Jessica was irresponsible. You said she was the reason Robert was stressed. I was jealous, Karen admitted, voice barely audible. Jessica has what I never did, a husband who loves her, a child she puts first, a life that doesn't revolve around controlling everyone else. I have anxiety. The doctor says the gambling was self-medicating. I need counseling. No more lies. No more tickets. Harold squeezed her hand. We'll get through it together. But the board will know. The money gets repaid. And you step down until you're better. 6 months later, I was frosting Tommy's 5th birthday cake when the doorbell rang. Karen stood on my porch holding a small wrap box, looking nervous but human. I know I'm not invited, she said quietly. But I wanted Tommy to have this. You are invited. I opened the door wider. She kept every promise. Weekly therapy, medication for anxiety. No more gambling. She wasn't warm and fuzzy. Old habits die harder than HOA rules. But the sharp edges were gone. No more surprise inspections. No more public shaming. The neighborhood felt lighter, like someone had finally mowed the metaphorical dandelions. As Tommy hugged his President Karen, and she helped him open the gift, a perfectly compliant toy truck, I realized something had shifted. Karen would never be my favorite neighbor, but she didn't have to be my enemy either. Sometimes the truth hurts before it heals. And in Pineview Estates, it finally did. The end. Months after the potluck meltdown, the Pineview Estates Facebook group, once Karen's personal propaganda channel, became strangely quiet on fines. Residents started posting photos of slightly messy yards without fear. Kids left bikes out past dusk. Holiday lights went up whenever people felt like it. The new interim board actually voted on things instead of rubber stamping Karen's decrees. Harold quietly repaid every loan from a personal account, muttering about restructuring community trust. Claire stopped smirking and actually asked me for pie baking tips one day. Progress. I guess. Tommy still calls Karen the lady who fell down, but now he adds, and then she got nice. Robert and I finally took that vacation we'd postponed for 3 years of emergency checks. My lawn, still not perfect, but nobody's measuring it with a ruler anymore. And every time I bake that apple pie now, I smile remembering how one forgotten dessert toppled an empire built on fear. Fines and scratch-off tickets. The moral? Never underestimate the quiet mom with receipts. In the suburbs, the real power isn't the president with a red blazer. It's the resident who finally decides enough is enough. And justice? It tastes even sweeter than perfect cinnamon apples. The neighborhood barbecue 6 months later felt different, lighter, louder, genuinely fun. Karen showed up in a simple sweater. No blazer, no clipboard. She brought deviled eggs instead of demands. When someone joked about old rules, she actually laughed instead of citing bylaws. Tommy ran up and hugged her without hesitation. "Grandma Karen," he yelled, and for once nobody corrected him. I watched her help him blow out candles and realized the woman who once terrorized us with spreadsheets had become human. Therapy worked. Medication helped. The gambling app was deleted. The secret bank accounts closed. She even sponsored a new community garden, real one, not the photo op version. Residents started trusting each other again. No more anonymous complaints. No more midnight patrols. My own violations folder, emptied and recycled. Robert finally told her, "We're family, but we're not your ATM." She nodded, eyes clear. "I know. I'm sorry." And she meant it. Sometimes the HOA Karen you fear most is just a broken person hiding behind power and a spray tan. Expose the truth. Survive the heart attack drama. And watch the neighborhood heal. Pineview Estates isn't perfect. Rules still exist, but now they serve the people, not one woman's ego. And every Christmas, when I set that golden apple pie on the table, I remember the sweetest revenge isn't yelling back. It's baking the truth and watching everyone finally taste it. The end.